Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Graying Jedi podcast. It's me, Urza Master, joined as always by Lord Uther and Jedi Master Siliamaz, reporting from the void. We are resuming today in that galaxy far, far away with episodes 4 through 6, or the second arc of Andor, a Star Wars series. And gentlemen, this takes us deeper into the development of that rebellion that we've been ever so fond of. Jedi Master Siliamaz, give us a little bit of perspective from the void on this second arc.
Thank you, Jedi Council members, and thank you all you loyal Graying Jedi fans. I have been banished to the Phantom Zone for the not-so-foreseeable future, but I'm happy to report that has not diminished my enthusiasm for the second season of Andor, which, as you know, is hop, skipping, and jumping 1 year at a time as we draw closer and closer to the inevitability of 2016's Rogue One. This is the second 3-episode arc. We are now 3 years before the Battle of Yavin, and we have jumped an entire year from the first 3 episodes that we covered in our previous podcast. Make sure you're checking the archives and staying up to date with Cassian and Luthen and Dedra and Cyril and all of our friends. Gentlemen, you may not know the name Beau Willimon as a household name like George Lucas, Tony Gilroy, Steven Spielberg, but you know his work. He created the very, very successful Netflix series House of Cards that starred back then a non-canceled Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright Penn as a pair of scheming Washington, D.C. politicians. And he did a lot of work behind the scenes on many successful films and television series. And then he joined the Andor writing staff in season 1, and he gave us possibly 3 of the best first season episodes, and that's setting a high bar. He was responsible for the prison arc on Narkina 5 in season 1. So he gave us Narkina 5, Nobody's Listening, and One Way Out. And I think we can all agree those made for 3 really, really sharp hours of television in the first season, where we had the mechanics of an Imperial prison and how to break out of it. And we had Kino Loy heartbreakingly inform us, I can't swim, Andy Serkis. It was just really, really, in a season that was already very strong, the 3-episode prison arcs. And not to mention, they were some of our best watched archive episodes of The Graying Jedi. So fans agreed with us, they were good. So Mr. Willimon, thank you for compelling television, and welcome back, as you are the writer of episodes 4, 5, and 6. The episodes in order. Ever been to Gorman? I have friends everywhere. And what a festive evening. So as we said, we are a year later. Bix and Cassian have fled Mina Rao and are now holed up in a safe house on Coruscant in the belly of the beast. When Luthen needs assignments, he does the old spy trick of sending out a flashing beacon, and then Cassian Andor Bix respond and go off on their various missions. But it's taking a toll. Bix is not handling all of this very well. I mean, don't forget, she was tortured by the Imperial Dr. Gorst in season 1. Still got plenty of open wounds from that. She was assaulted violently by an Imperial officer on Mina Rao. So she's got several deep layers of trauma that she's working through, and she's medicating, self-medicating. It could be spice, it could be some other exotic Star Wars opiate, but she's definitely trying to keep a clear head, or at least make the nightmares go away. I don't know how much Cassian has picked up on this. Certainly Luthen, and he urges her, "We need you healthy," which is a loaded statement to make to somebody in that position. So they're up on Coruscant, trying to survive in the shadows, if you will. Meanwhile, Wilmon, who was the other escapee from Mina Rao, he's hooked up with Saw Gerrera and the partisans, and this is sort of where our first, again, we saw it a little bit in season 1, but we're seeing it even more here. If the rebels on Yavin 4 that Cassian runs into in the first 3 episodes seem like a disorganized crime, disorganized gang, Saw is even worse, because Saw is very organized, but he just has 0 Kybers to give. And he is as ruthless as we remember him. Forrest Whitaker, who sadly has taken ill and had to leave his other show that he was doing, Godfather of Harlem. I would say a special shout out to Mr. Whitaker, who's been with us, all the way back to 1986. I believe one of his first roles was in Martin Scorsese's The Color of Money with Paul Newman and Tom Cruise. He's been a treasure for decades. He's had Oscar-nominated roles. He's an award-winning actor. He's not doing so well right now, but you'd never know it as the committed, fanatical, zealous Saw Gerrera. And so Wilmon has brought to him an extractor. And apparently what Saw and his partisans are doing right now, again, independent of anything that Luthen and Mon Mothma and these other rebel disorganized cells are attempting, he's fighting the Empire in his own way. He's stealing starship fuel. He is a pipe poacher, as he refers to it. And so what they do is they go around to Imperial pipelines and they extract said fuel and then use it for their own gains to launch missions and counterinsurgency against the Empire. The problem is it's a very dangerous procedure. There are apparently 8 variations of the various pipelines that the Empire uses in there, to process it and refine it and so forth. So you have to know with this one machine, depending on when you decide to raid it, which variation or which setup you're going to have to use to plug in. It's a dangerous fuel. It literally can cook you from the inside out, as Saw describes. And in a little bit of a touch of sort of Colonel Kurtz, let's say, from Apocalypse Now, or even Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, these fumes have basically driven him a little mad, or at least underlined some of the madness that we've seen. And he talks at length in just a chilling monologue. And I actually had to play it twice to be able to fully grasp what he was telling us. Fans of Dave Filoni's The Clone Wars will remember we saw a young Saw Gerrera lose his sister while they were fighting as young rebels, much like the ones we saw in the first 3 episodes. They were fighting against the Empire on Onderon, not to be confused with Alderaan. Onderon was their home planet. In the animated series, we met Saw and his sister. They had a tight sibling bond, much like Cassian initially did with his sister. She was killed in the animated series, and obviously that left a wound for Saw. And he even kind of fleetingly refers to the Rhydonium that they're stealing as, quote, my sister, Rhydo. And that wasn't her name, obviously, but he's conflated the two in his head. And he convinces Wilmon, as they are extracting this Rhydonium, to take the mask off, to embrace the madness, to embrace the fire, the spark of rebellion. And it's just an absolutely chilling moment when you realize that Saw represents the other extreme. If the Empire is authoritarianism and tyranny and all the bad things we were talking about in, that George Lucas laid out so eloquently, good versus evil, black versus white, Saw he is completely pure in his motives. He wants nothing more than to fight the Empire with every fiber of his being. And yet his methods are absolutely ruthless. Like, he shoots a man point blank in the face with a blaster, and then screams, "Traitor!" To sort of justify it. As it turns out, it appears that the guy he was killing was an Imperial spy or a plant, but there was no due process. There was no. Saw had decided he was a traitor, and then his minion pulls out a communicator, and that's the evidence, right? I mean, we as viewers say, okay, fine, yeah, this guy must have been a spy, but was he? Or was Saw just paranoid? I mean, he was prepared to kill Willman. He said, "Do you know what you're doing to this alleged plant?" And the guy says, "Yeah, I'm pretty good." He goes, "Enough to do without the boy?" He's seen too much. So he doesn't care if you're with the cause. He doesn't care. It's just it's a fascinating portrait of the other side. You can become too enmeshed in the fight for freedom, if you will. And Director Krennic mentions this when he has a tense standoff with Mon Mothma. We'll get to that in a few moments. We've said it many times. One person's terrorist is another one's rebel. To the Empire, these are guerrillas. These are criminals, the rebels. They need to be hunted down, jailed, executed, put on trial, what have you. Whereas the rebels see the exact opposite with the Empire. These are, jackbooted thugs and monsters, and they are destroying the galaxy, and we're the only ones who can overthrow them. It's just the richness of that debate and dialogue. There are no answers, but just the fact that you're bringing the debate into the equation is absolutely fascinating. So those moments stood out for me on the first one there. We had, whereas Mon Mothma, and we spent a great deal of time with her family on Chandrila and the family dynamics and her betrayal with Tay. Here in this one, she kind of takes a step backwards in the sense that now she's back to her job in the Senate. She's encountering people who are too scared to speak up because Palpatine has, control of all of the apparatus of government and so forth. And even though these people agree this is the right thing to do to kind of roll back some of these laws and edicts and so forth, they're just like, I can't afford to take the risk. And she's unsuccessful. It's the right thing to do. She talks about civil liberties, and she talks about, equity and all of those things. And they're just like, yeah, Mon, that's great. But, I've still got constituents to take care of. So the political reality running into, the trying to defeat the cause. Like, if you can't solve it politically, if you can't find a nonviolent solution, well, then you have to unleash people like Luthen and Saw. And then you see the consequences can have unintended consequences. So you have that dynamic, which I thought was fascinating. Gentlemen, I want you two to address the sort of main Cassian story here, in which he is sent to Gorman to assess what is essentially a stand-in for the French resistance. They even come with berets and a sort of Gallic-sounding language, and lots of spiders. And what, of course, they can't see is that the Empire is 3 steps ahead of them, and that Dedra and Cyril are playing them to overplay their hands, to make that critical mistake that will turn public opinion against them and give the Empire even more reason to clamp down and take what they want from Gorman, which is what they all planned to do all along. But let's go into that, gentlemen. In terms of Cassian, remember when we met him, he was a thief just looking out for himself, and now look at how he handles this mission and what he tells the Gorman front and so forth, and how that operation ultimately ends with Val and Cinta.
But correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Dedra still, but isn't she playing Cyril right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, she's playing on top of...
Am I reading that right? Like, so exactly. They're all playing each other, except for Cyril doesn't know he's playing?
Right. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had confirmation on that. Go ahead, Urza. I'll follow up after.
Yeah, I mean, that's the... I love that storyline quite a bit, Dedra and Cyril, because Cyril is just this hapless cuck and has not changed. He's a very static character.
I kind of feel bad for him. which
You
is
do.
weird. Like,
You do
she's
feel
playing
bad.
you, dude. It's one of those situations where if all the bros were hanging around, it'd be like, you're getting played. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
You're getting
And then
played.
that person getting played is like, what are you talking about? She'd never do that to me.
Exactly. And that's just like, but he deserves it. That's the thing. That he is just such a hook, line, and sinker, like uncreative thinker, buys into the system, self-righteous, self-important Luddite, that of course he's seeing himself as important through this vein of somebody who really does not care for him. Dedra does not care about Cyril. She's using him. He is capital that she can trust, and I think you get that when in the first arc where she explains how she was raised. You know, from very early childhood, she was indoctrinated into this system and has efficiently become a cold-hearted, you know, empire servant, basically. Cyril did not have that same experience. He was cucked by his mother, essentially, and he's the drone. She's the Borg Queen, you know, and the Borg Queen is so full of herself that she's destined for failure. And that's the thing, is I think Dedra is being viewed by the brass in the Empire correctly as the hapless Borg Queen who's so self-important and is taking these bits and pieces of the high up, basically off the Emperor's table, and thinking, okay, I'm important. I'm moving mountains. You are just a cog in the machine, and that is the real beautiful thing of this whole imperial sort of bureaucracy. Everybody is expendable. Every single person, even Grand Moff Tarkin, and they name drop him quite a bit, but every single one of them totally expendable. That's why they just build another Death Star, because the Empire is that potent. It's that strong. It has that much influence. And that's where, you know, I think you're getting the foil here of the diametric opposite on the Rebel side with Saw Gerrera, who's like, you know, we have two engineers. We have this one from the Rebels who knows what we need to know. We have a decent engineer who can probably learn, and then one of them we're going to kill because we don't need both. We shouldn't have both. Basically, it's a liability to have two people who know the same thing, which is true. I mean, it's objective, cold, you know, guerrilla warfare truth is you want to know everything you need to, but not have too much knowledge to that you're creating liabilities for yourself. That's just good strategic guerrilla warfare. And then you figure it out on the fly. It's living on that adaptability. It's insane. And I totally get where, you know, like a Colonel Kurtz, Saw Gerrera is cooked by, you know, maybe not madness, although I've always thought Colonel Kurtz is probably on some sort of exotic jungle drug. But this is, again, an exotic mineral drug that has addled his brain and combined with his trauma and his psychological injuries to make him not just an effective leader, but a calculated, insane leader. And the Emperor, to his credit, is not really insane. He's just megalomaniacal. And I think you can get that on either side. It's sort of like having a Stalin and a Hitler. They can really recognize in each other forgive the terminology here, but the greatness of the other. There was a lot of respect between those two leaders. They hated each other, but they both had similar goals. And that's the same thing. Saw Gerrera, the Emperor, they both kind of want the same thing. Large-scale control. They both want to exact vengeance upon the other for perceived slights, or real, actual, you know, the Emperor wants to squash the rebellion and subjugate, and Saw Gerrera wants to blow shit up and punish the Empire for everything that they've done. They're doing the same stuff to each other. And that's where, you know, a leader like Mon Mothma can step in and actually, you know, as we see later on, become that effective, you know, rebellion because she understands that there has to be a better way forward, not just a way forward without an empire. You know, you don't want to throw things into chaos, and that's what Saw Gerrera is all about. It's like feed it back to chaos.
I like the name dropping of Grand Moff Tarkin and the Emperor without forcing it. Mm-hmm. It's natural, which again we talk about this all the time in any of our podcasts, that you can easily click on below to subscribe or share with friends. The perfect Mother's Day gift, if you ask me, because any mom who loves Star Trek and Star Wars will love us. But anyway, I like that. I also like this idea that the Emperor is just taking meetings. He's like, oh yeah, I got a 4 o'clock. Yeah, come on in. You know, can you? Because that's what they're talking about. I forget Deidre's superior's name. What's that guy's name?
Major Pentagrass.
Okay, so Major Pentagram. I'm going to see you at 3, and you know, then I'm going to see Darth Vader at 4. He's my 4 o'clock. It just, for some reason it adds depth, because maybe my younger self just thought that Palpatine sat in his chair staring out into space all the time, waiting for something to happen. And instead he's this political mover and shaker, which I guess we kind of see that in the prequels. Now that I'm saying it, it's just kind of hitting me now. And he's got to continue going that route. So that's something that stuck out to me. And then, you know, we're starting to see that sheer ruthlessness of Luthen, which I think we've seen before, but I almost feel like Cassian seems to be caught off guard by it a little bit, because now it's come home, right? Like has to do with Bix. And you can almost see the writing on the wall where Cassian's going, was Luthen going to take Bix out at one point? Like, was that the intention of Luthen going over to their apartment, was to possibly do something?
He needs an assessment, right?
Yeah,
and,
right.
And an assessment works multiple angles.
Well, here's an interesting thing. Here's an interesting thing about Luthen in this arc. When he speaks to Cassian on his ship, we see the Luthen of season 1. We see a man who says, at one point he says, "You're thinking like a thief," and Andor snaps back, "I'm thinking like a soldier," and then Luthen snaps back, "Start thinking like a leader." And it's just a great tennis match between those two right there. But for the most part in this arc, in the first 3 episodes at the wedding, it was, again, Luthen the charmer, Luthen in disguise, Luthen pulling all the strings. I'm going to call Cinta in to take out Tay. But here, when he meets with Lonnie, his plant inside the conference room, he's on edge. He says, "Dedra's running Gorman? Why didn't I know this? Why didn't you tell me? Why'd you keep me waiting 3 months? What's the end game? Propaganda's only the beginning," you know. And he's barking at poor Lonnie. I mean, that guy. 2 years ago when we first met him, like in the timeline, he wanted out. So I can only imagine these last 2 years have been even worse on the poor fellow. And plus he's got a young kid at home now. But then another one of my favorite supporting characters in this whole show, Clea, Luthen's assistant. She discovers that there's problems in Davos Skolden's collection, not related to them, but could result in them discovering a listening device they planted. And when she tells Luthen, he basically goes to pieces. He's barking at his trusted assistant saying, "I never should have let you talk me into this. What information did we get?" And then he finally breaks down and says, "It's too much." You know, and both the Empire and Luthen basically say, you know, the Empire says, we're arresting too many people. We can't get all the information from all of this. There's too much intelligence to sift through. Luthen's basically throwing up his hands and saying the same thing. I can't keep track of all the lies. Like, we've got operations here, there, everywhere. Like, and now you're telling me one is in jeopardy and we could be exposed. Because if Dalvo finds that bug, he's going to the Empire. And then there's, I mean, the whole House of Cards again, pun intended, since Bo Willimon wrote House of Cards, it all just collapses. So here is Luthen. It's interesting. I wouldn't say he's cracking, he hasn't turned into Saw Gerrera, but he's starting to feel a little bit of the pressure. It makes me, and I'll tell you this just as a quick aside, gentlemen, because it came to me literally last night when I rewatched these episodes. I don't know that Luthen is going to make it through Rogue One and A New Hope. I think, as Jedi Master Lord Uther suggests, we're going to start seeing some of these key allies go by the wayside as we get closer. Because by Rogue One, basically Cassian is a man alone, and Mon Mothma is a woman alone. So some of these allies and support systems and so forth, that's not saying definitively that Bix Colleen might not have just gone off to live on Naboo, but there's a general sense that perhaps tragedy will befall some additional people of the cast. You know what I really would have loved to have seen? If they had thought this through that far in advance, and I'm only coming to it as a Monday morning quarterback, I would have loved to have done a reshot, not a reshot, but like show images of the last scene of New Hope when Han and Luke and Chewie are getting their medals from Princess Leia on Yavin 4 for destroying the Death Star, the first real victory that the rebels have against the Empire. And as you've seen those footage time and time again with John Williams' score, you see all the Rebel Alliance from Yavin 4 gathered in a large crowd applauding them and cheering them. I would have loved to have match cut a shot of Luthen in that crowd, clapping. No dialogue, but just for him, because his biggest thing is, I'm leading this rebellion and I'll probably never see the fruits of it. I'll probably never see a free galaxy. But I know that. He told that to Lonnie in season 1. I think that would have been a magnificent moment, alternative moment, to have Luthen just quietly in the crowd, you know, looking with the 70s grain that, you know, the George Lucas had just, you know, I got to see it. I got to see all of this paid off. That would have been tremendous. I don't think we have that fate with Luthen, and I think this episode is with him starting to come a little bit wobbly in the moment. I don't know what that may portend. We still have 6 episodes to go, but
By the way, Forrest Whitaker, his first film, he was Charles Jefferson in the movie Fast Times at
That's
Ridgemont
right.
High. Yes.
That's right.
So
He was the football player. He like
That's
they got
right.
him all. Yes.
Every once in a while, I know something that Jedi Silly Moss doesn't know. Actually, this is probably the first time. So,
Oh no, you know.
yay for me.
Yay.
Time to get some sausage.
I'm gonna
Learn about Cuba.
The ending of the 3rd episode, to me, I mean, I liked all these. Of course, it's going to get a green from me. And I told you guys in a chat that we have that I like the first 3 better. But to me, what really kind of tied the second trilogy together is Forrest Whitaker. His speech was just magnificent, and Bix and Cassian getting their revenge on Bix's torturer was, you know, I'm not a big fan of revenge, but at that one, I clapped for that because I was so happy that Bix might get some healing now. Probably, I mean, probably not a lot, but maybe something, or at least allow her to move forward, right? That's probably why she did that, was so she could move forward. So anyway, speaking of, obviously green for me, no doubt.
I'll take on that and say green for me as well. I actually like this arc better than the first, and it's because it delivered on a few things I've really been waiting to see. And Luthen and the little chuckling end where they get through that dramatic tension was unreal. It was so good. It was so well done. But this one kind of punched me pretty hard with Val and Cinta. And, you know, I feel like I've been waiting since the beginning of season 1 to see those two finally get a romantic moment together. And in the very next breath, she's accidentally shot in an alleyway. And, you know, the rug is pulled out from underneath that. And it's so very... Well, if you look at the preview picture for Andor Season 2, it's a French revolutionary portrait of Andor, is what it is. And this arc in particular feels very French resistance, French revolution. It's very rooted in that. And that revolution was very bloody. And a lot of incidents like this happened, where good people were just caught in the crossfire, literally caught in the crossfire. And in this case, this farmer who's kind of storming this little incident would really be on their side 100% if they just clued him in, if they just took 5 seconds to explain what's going on. But because they're so haphazard and so unpracticed in rebellion, just like Vel told them they were, this is what we get. And I think, you know, you get the Bix vengeance. It's nice. It's a nice payoff. But I think what you're realizing here is this is the turn away from sort of the quiet, calculated rebellion. And this is on Coruscant. This is big. This is going to be big time news. Them getting away is going to be very difficult. And it's going to create a lot of chaos at the center of the Empire that there's going to be hell to pay. This is essentially what Saw Gerrera is doing, but in very precise, calculated, because they brought this up in dialogue that the Empire wants to adopt these interrogation procedures, and this is the one guy who knows how to do it, and they just took him out, and that's a big freaking deal. But the most important part, which I think gets a little lost in this, is you get that standoff between Mon Mothma and Mr. Lispy, who's high up in the Empire, where Mon is taking him to task. This is like watching, I don't know, like, if you want to draw a modern corollary, maybe like watching AOC go up against, you know, you name it, in the opposite party here, in a war of the words over a piece of art and what it may represent. But it's not about the art. You know, like, each of them know where the other falls. There's no illusions here that Mon is not with Palpatine. Mon is not with the Empire. But they see her as sort of that, like, necessary, like, you got to give them a little hope so you can squash it away. They don't realize how effective she really is. And that's kind of where, you know, she's almost lashing out in kind of a childish way. And that's what they view her as. And that, the beauty of that is that plays right into everything they need. And I don't know that she's consciously doing it. And that saves Luthen. It saves his ass big time. So I think just the layered presentation of character, which is the strength of Andor overall in this, is just, this is the brilliantest green Kyber crystal I could give.
And I just want to say, much like the prison arc, if you go back and rewatch those 3 episodes, the first one sort of just sets the day-to-day routine. The second one sort of starts to turn the stove up and we start to get a simmer. And then the third episode, everything goes mad and you've got guards and floods and different levels, and it's just, and this arc also proceeds. The very first one, the first episode here, Have You Ever Been to Gorman? Mostly dialogue, kind of quiet, lots of scenes of Bix and Cassian alone in the safe house, cooking dinner, you know, etc. The second episode, Cassian goes to Gorman to make his assessment. An absolutely terrific moment from Diego Luna, as we've pointed out, where they approach him naively in a cafe, as if to say, like, and he says, "You don't know me." He goes, "I could be who I am." And he goes, "And you're lucky that I am who you think I am, because I could be a spy, I could be a mole, and you just put every one of the people you care about in a cell." And then she's like, you know, "Well, you need to meet my father." And he, like, you know, practically giggles as a, quote, fashion designer. I can't wait to meet him. But it's, you know, it's just a fantastic moment. But Cassian tells them, "You're not ready. Like, you guys, it's one thing to steal something. It's another thing to live at the crime scene and then try to tell the rest of the populace, hey, this is what the Empire's doing. They're building an armory in your town hall. We stole these weapons from them." He's like, "You're basically putting the target on your own backs and you can't even see that." Like, it's it'd be one thing if they were going to raid this convoy, steal the weapons, and then go off planet. But they have no, I mean, that's what I'm saying. They haven't even thought this through. And as you can see, despite the fact that by the third episode, we have this frantic heist. We have Clea trying to remove the bug, as you say, absolutely white hot suspense. We have Bix and Cassian going after Dr. Gorst. Everything ratchets up in the third episode to an absolute fever pitch. And so again, you know, kudos, Mr. Williman. You are on equal footing with Mr. Gilroy as far as your command. And Dan Gilroy, Tony's brother, will do the next 3 episodes. And he did the Aldhani heist episodes on the Forest World in the first season. So we know he's good for some high ratcheting thrills as we get to 2 years before the Battle of Yavin. So yes, gentlemen, shimmering emerald green here. We're really going to miss this show when it's gone, so let's enjoy it while we can. And we get 3 more hours of sensational television coming very soon.
Absolutely. And if you want to keep up with the Graying Jedi and all things Andor, I suggest you hit that subscribe button. Drop us a comment. Let us know, what did you feel about this second story arc, or where do you feel like this is headed? Are we going to see some mass kill-offs of our favorite characters, or are we going to see maybe some blood before the end and surprise happy endings for some folks, which is always possible, maybe not likely. But as we venture back from that galaxy far, far away, so shall we return, and until we do, may the Force be with you, always.